Your Power BI solution is not being used because you just don't follow the right process to create them. In fact, it's so simple that most people just forget to do it. Answer this question. Why is your report necessary? Could it not just be an Excel file? In this video, I'm going to show you my process to make sure that your Power BI solutions are great and not just another dashboard. I call my process LAS. To understand the first step, let me explain it to you with a little example. Do you remember that birthday that you were talking for months of going to a specific restaurant and that you also wanted to see a very specific artist in their concert? Then the day comes when you actually get your surprise and you're in fact going to a fancy restaurant and you got some tickets for the concert. But even if the restaurant was more fancy and more expensive than the one you want to go, and the tickets are for a specific artist that it's way more famous than the one you wanted, and maybe even it's more difficult to get those tickets, even with all of that in mind, it still feels like they're not listening to you. And that is the key point. Listen. We love our developments with our fancy graphs and all those really nice functionalities. And don't get me wrong, I'm the first one that whenever possible, I like to drop some Power BI magic here and there. But the reality is that you have to develop with your end user in mind. You have to develop something that they need and not something that they want. And you need to make sure that they will be able to use whatever is it that you develop. None of those fancy functionalities will do much if they're not able to use them. For the second step, let me tell you a tiny story. This past year, I was months with a back injury to the point that my girlfriend had to pick me up from bed. The doctors did multiple tests, and at the end of the day, the results came that I had nothing serious and it was most probably just a strained muscle. Hey, great news, but that also meant hours of physiotherapy. Being the nerd that I am, before I went to physiotherapy, I spent hours on the internet trying to understand what was going on with me, trying to understand what was the muscle that may be injured and what could I do. Once I was in front of the physio, he started asking me a lot of questions and doing several tests. To his surprise, my own assessment was as good as the one he was doing there. He also told me that understanding all the muscles in the hips and in the back would help me recover much faster than other patients. The thing was that he was able to tell me specifically which muscles I needed to work on. I was able to activate them because I already knew that from my own research, and that helped quite a lot in the different exercises that I had to do. And that's basically the second step, assessment. You need to understand what they have, why, and why is it not useful anymore. This is the only way I have found to be able to create tools that they actually need and not just what they tell you that they need. Because most of the times they're not even aware of what you are able to do. This next step has two parts to it. I'll try to be brief this time, as I think that it's easier to understand if I just tell you straight. You first create one draft based on the conversations you had at the beginning and the assessment that you did with your clients. Something simple, like a PowerPoint with a couple of pictures or even places that just say what is going to be in there. You then present that same draft to your end users and your stakeholders, and they will for sure provide you with some feedback on things that they don't think are necessary and others that they want yes or yes to be in there. With that feedback, you apply all those changes and you can move to the second part of this step. We have basically created a mockup. So you have a mockup. What do you think would be the second part? Let's see. You have listened to your clients, you have done your own assessment of their needs, and you have a mockup of what they might want. So let the fun begin. Let's start developing. And before we go full into development, let's not forget that this is not the last step. So let's start with the ETL process. You request whatever permissions you need, you get access to that data, you connect to it, and you can do all the transformations that you need on whatever tool you're using. You clean the data, you remove columns, you get rid of blanks, you add any necessary information that might be needed in there. You can create your calendar table, and finally you create your star schema and any other things that you might see fit depending on your data. You load all of that into the report and you can start developing all your visuals and your measures. And if you work with Power BI, this is the fun part, where you get to work with dates on DAX and you get to also get confused on which filters you have applied, if they are in the visual, in the page, in the measure, or whatever other things that happen with DAX. Jokes aside, you get done with your measures and it's time for your visualizations. And this should be relatively quick. You have a mockup with everything that they need, so you just need to follow that and apply it. Done. You have created a great tool that fits your client's needs and their desires. We're done, right? Not so fast. If you want to create awesome reporting solutions, you need to understand the last step. This last step is what marks the difference between good reporting solutions and great reporting solutions. And the first thing you need to really understand is that this step starts actually on the assessment phase. Let me put it this way. How much better would you consider that your reporting solution is if more people in the organization were to use it? Especially if those people were all in similar roles. That is the key. Scale. If you manage to create a good reporting solution for one team, there has to be for sure other teams in your organization or your company that are going to need something exactly as you already did, or at least similar that you can adapt quickly. You could even use role-level security to make sure that they only see whatever information they need and they cannot get confused between information of different teams, and you wouldn't have to develop anything on top of what you already have. This is the last process. It's great and it can be used in any reporting solution that you have. But wait, because one thing is knowing the process and another thing is losing hours trying to implement it. If the time it takes you to implement the process is so long that your stakeholders just start thinking that it's completely useless, then the process, it's not worth it. So the question is, how long it actually takes to implement this process? How long it takes to create a great Power BI solution? I'm gonna leave you a video right here if you wanna know exactly how long it would take you to implement this same process.